me missing out on that, a lot of my anger was towards God. When I was down in the gutters, it looked dark. I was like, I can't really see a future for myself, a future for my family, seeing my mother struggle. Something's bad is happening, and something good always comes out of bad. That's true. That's what I've learned my whole life.
Welcome back to Mac Stories. I'm your host for this series on prayer, Bridget Richardson. And we've had some pretty cool themes so far on this series. We've had adversity, boldness, dialogue, and now anger. So here we meet Edgardo Giron. He's a University of St. Thomas chemical engineering major, and Edgardo takes us back to his childhood and talks about doing things that most children don't like, chores.
As a child, prayer to me was kind of like a chore. That's, I grew up I was cradle Catholic a little bit, like here and there. Then in my teens, I kind of went away, some family troubles, when my dad having to go away and my mom, we were struggling, it was really like a hard time for me to like pray. So in my head, I was like, I'm just gonna step away, or in my head, I thought I was being rebellious, I guess. So my prayer life was kind of going back and forth. I really wasn't doing it. And then in my high school, maybe like my sophomore year, I went to a retreat. And at that point forward, it's really just grown. My prayer has grown into like talking as like a person to talk to. So I see God as more like a friend and as a person that can give me guidance and I can just vent to. And it's just someone that's always there for me. So whenever I need to pray, it usually is just like, hey, God, look, I got this going on. I just talk to him, same voice, same everything. I don't see it as a chore. I see it as like a conversation to like my best friend or to my mother or to my dad. And just me being able to have that venting. So yeah, it's just talking.
So Edgardo goes from seeing prayer as a chore to seeing a real, true relationship with God, seeing God as a friend and a confidant. And it seems like he nurtured that relationship as he got older. But then he mentions in his story that there's a time that he fell away, became rebellious. What happened there? What's that story? So let's hear from Edgardo.
I guess it really was like me in middle school, like that transition, like when I stepped back from my prayer life and just church in general, was really when like my father, he got deported. And when he got deported when I was like 14, 13, it sucked not having him there for those first 2 years, for like literally almost 2 years. And me missing out on that, a lot of my anger was towards God and having that I was just venting out, but it wasn't prayer like asking for like help or giving thanks or none of that. And then coming to terms and realizing that, I know my father wasn't here at that moment, that time, that going into high school, going to that retreat, that transition, I was able to fully realize that it's not God's fault. We got free will, and there's a lot more to it than just something's bad is happening. And something good always comes out of bad. That's true. That's what I've learned my whole life, and I've learned that through that prayer, through just that me venting. Although I didn't know it at the time, me venting, I kind of built up into that position, that put me in that position to be able to talk to God and be like, you know what, I got this. And also telling him thanks, because that moment of when I was down in the gutters, it looked dark. I was like, I can't really see a future for myself, a future for my family, seeing my mother struggle. Realizing that I can place my trust in God, and that me praying to him kind of showed me like a better light and showed me that light, that there was a way out.
If there is a time to be angry with God, Edgardo makes a pretty compelling case for it. And if you're a child and you have a parent taken away from you, that's horrific, and it has to be emotionally scarring. And like all the stories we keep hearing in this series over and over, even though they felt a particular resentment toward God, they never stop talking to him. And while Edgardo feels anger and he's venting, he still keeps those lines of communication open. So while he was doing this venting and he's angry and he's going through this stuff in his life, what's going on with his faith? What's happening with his church community and going to mass on a regular basis?
Well, my mom always would go to church, and I would never join her because I was mad at God. But she would always go to like the Eucharistia. To like Eucharistia in our St. Cyril of Alexandria, there was a little room where you can go in. It was kind of disconnected from the church, but it was still in the church, where they had the Eucharist there every day, every hour. You can go. I think it's 24/7. You could go there. I would never go. My mom would always go pray after work, and she would always go try to like find that peace. And me, I didn't see any sense of it at all. But until like I saw that light from just being able to talk to God, and that like being able to see hope from that relationship with him. I started going to there like at those nights where I would just be upset, or I'd be struggling to have that like motivation for the next day. It would be going to St. Cyril of Alexandria, just going into the little room and just sitting down there a couple hours, maybe just a couple minutes, but just that peace and quiet, and seeing him right in front of me was really like my moment where I was like, okay, yeah, this is, I see hope.
He saw hope in the Eucharist, even in the devastation of hopelessness. He went into a little room and discovered what adoration is, adoring our Eucharistic Lord in his presence. Now, what about the community? What about the church that his mom was a part of, and that the community he was really a part of, even though he had been away from God?
St. Cyril has really had a huge impact on my life throughout my childhood. And when I was young, I had my first communion there, my baptism. But once I had those problems with my family, kind of disconnected. And then going into, my high school years and going to those retreats with the teens, it was called Kerygma. Explaining what Kerygma is to ignite, that's the logo. It's like a little fire to reignite yourself, reignite that fire in your heart. And it really did. And, going to the retreat, connecting with those people, I was really able to see God, not just in the Eucharist, but in the people around me. We weren't all perfect. We all had stuff going on in our lives, but seeing us there for that weekend, that retreat, and just everybody's just happy, having a good time and loving each other. It really just changed my perspective in life, and realizing that, good things come out of every negative, and you can meet amazing people. And, I just got to keep putting my faith in God and just do it the best I can. So yeah, St. Cyril, shout out to them. Shout out to the whole community there.
The interesting thing about Edgardo's story is that he first saw Jesus in the people around him, in the faces of the people around him. But maybe he was more aware of that because he first experienced who God was in the Eucharist, in adoration. In that chapel, he was able to witness the hope he has in Christ in the Eucharist, and then see God alive, actually living in the world today, in all of those people. Shout out to St. Cyril. So he mentioned this retreat that he went on a couple of times. Let's dig into that.
I definitely do think that going to Kerygma and going to the retreat in general, and seeing my first retreat, living it, and seeing everybody around me just so happy, so energetic, and having this passion for and love for God, it really kind of made me question where I was at in my relationship with God. And it made me see that, okay, this isn't all that bad. There isn't, maybe some good can come out of it. Because in my head, it was like, okay, people are just using this to cope, or people are using this to escape from things, but it's really not. For me, it was seeing these people just completely, genuinely happy, and made me feel like I want that. I want that happiness in my life. And, and then going back to serve at that community, going back to help at that community, and meeting the people that were serving me at the time and learning their stories was like, okay, we're not all alone. We all got some stuff going on. I mean, as an adult, this, you grow up to that. But as a kid, you're just kind of like, oh, it's just me. Your world revolves around you. Learning and talking to those people allowed me to see that there was hope and there was a way to live life that was better than I was doing at that moment.
Don't you hear echoes of Pat's story in this part?
And I just remember the people that in the youth group that I started going to, the youth minister, the core members, the other teens who were my peers at the time, those people, seeing that joy, seeing that peace, this kind of extra whatever it is, knowing whatever it is that they have, I want that. And I didn't know what it was at the time, but it was Jesus.
Through retreat, and more importantly, examples of Christians around him who lived the joy of the gospel with love and energy and vibrance and hope and peace, he was able to witness what Christ is really like. I say that, but let's remember that Edgardo's pain was real. But the example of those around him made him question his life experiences in a good way. It made him think critically about how he can redirect his pain toward understanding that God is the only way through this. It wasn't an escape from life's hardships, but rather an embrace. And I absolutely love the way he describes his childlike faith now has morphed into his adult faith life. When you realize that your faith isn't meant for just you and to be expressed inward, that it's outward expression of Christ's love, ready to serve, openness, here for everybody to share stories, to feel Christ's love in a very visceral way. It's such a beautiful testament to how much he's grown and matured as a person. Now in his community, Edgardo shares who keeps him focused on an ongoing, strong dialogue with God. And it's someone you've seen before.
Father Eduardo, man, he's been really important in my life. And, he's my boy. What can I say? That's my boy. No matter what, although, he is a younger priest, and you can have those conversations, those fun conversations like, oh, let's get on Fortnite, or, hey, let's hop on a con, let's go get some food. But when it comes to those serious moments, he's able to sit down with you and relate, because he's a younger priest, so he did just come from graduating from college a couple years ago, so he understands where you're at right now. He understands the stresses that we're facing as college students. Me being able to just to talk to him about stuff that's going on, like a friend, and as well being able to talk to him as like a priest in those moments, it helps. And that's one thing I think gets misconceived, that a priest isn't just a priest; he can be your friend. He can be your boy, because he helped me out. He's a good person to hang out with. He's a good friend, and he's a good role model too.
If you missed Father Eduardo's episode, it's linked here. And I can't help but make the connection to fatherhood throughout this story. Edgardo, in a sense, lost his earthly father. It was devastating. He was pulled away from him. He wasn't lost, but as a child, he felt like he lost his father. And so he's mad at God the Father. He's venting, he's frustrated, but he keeps going to God the Father and pleading to him. And then in this life now, he's found this connection to a spiritual father in Father Eduardo to help keep him going, to help keep his connection strong with God, to make sure that he is on the right path and he's being shored up. It's just this really beautiful witness of the many levels of fatherhood that we adopt in this lifetime. And I don't know about you, but it makes me hopeful. No matter what happens, no matter what life throws at you, it's just so empowering to think God's got you. So the challenge. Let's go with the community aspects of Edgardo's story. Think of someone you think might be struggling and reach out today. It could be anybody you think might be in a hardship. You can call them, invite them to Mass, pray with them, whatever that looks like for you, reach out. Let's show the love of God alive in all of us. And if you're the one struggling, let this series be a tool. Be bold in your prayer like Cameron. Don't cut off communication to God, just like Edgardo. Just keep venting and praying and being mad, but don't cut off communication with God. And then like Father Eduardo, remember, or try to remember, that God will sustain you, that God is there with you, even when it's hard. The series on prayer has been great. Now, next series, we're gonna talk about a walk, but not just any walk. We're gonna talk about walking where St. James walked. And if you haven't yet, go ahead, subscribe to our YouTube, hit the bell icon so you're notified of our latest episodes, and follow us on social so you know all the behind the scenes stuff. I'm Bridget Richardson, and you've been watching Max Stories. Bye.